Continuing from my last video where the victim received an email claiming to be from Facebook or, at the time of recording, the NHS regarding the COVID-19 vaccination programme. Within the email was a link which, when clicked, directed the victim to a spoofed web server I was hosting on my Linux machine. On that web page, it either asked the victim to input their username and password or just general personal information, including their bank details, ready for my machine to capture. So what if the victim receives a phishing email again, but this time it has more of a malicious intent to it, such as being able to execute a remote access Trojan? An example could be an e-commerce platform such as eBay, Gumtree or PayPal, sending the victim an email with a monthly seller's invoice attached. Or it could be Microsoft sending the victim an email saying they found a vulnerability in their system and they must download a security patch now. So let's find out how this is done. The definition of malware is software intentionally designed to cause damage to a computer, server, client or computer network. A wide variety of malware types exist, including computer viruses, worms, Trojan horses, ransomware, spyware, adware, rogue software, wiper and scareware. To this day, the most popular method of malware delivery is through email links, attachments and untrusted downloads, and malware comes in many shapes and sizes. From an inconspicuous file which has been downloading and making your computer run slow because it's hogging the RAM or the random access memory, to a fully blown executable which destroys the BIOS of a computer. A lot of modern computers nowadays use UEFI over BIOS. UEFI is the Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, which has rarely been attacked with malware, but according to Kaspersky Labs has been done. The example of malware delivery and execution I'm going to show today is an email containing a malicious link or an attachment that, when downloaded, executes a remote access Trojan. So what is a remote access Trojan? A remote access Trojan, according to Malwarebytes, is a program that provides the capability to allow covert surveillance or the ability to gain unauthorized access to a victim PC. Remote access Trojans often mimic similar behaviors of a keylog applications by allowing the automated collection of keystrokes, usernames, passwords, screenshots, browser history, emails, chat logs, etc. Remote access Trojans differ from keyloggers in that they provide the capability for an attacker to gain unauthorized remote access to the victim machine via specially configured communication protocols which are set up upon initial infection of the victim computer. This backdoor into the victim machine can allow the attacker unfettered access, including the ability to monitor user behavior, change computer settings, browse and copy files, utilize the bandwidth for possible criminal activity, access connected systems and much more. To show that this is in fact a remote access virus, I've set up the victim and the attacker on two separate networks. Each network has its own router with a host device sitting behind it, so the two networks cannot communicate directly to each other. I'll explain the topology a little bit later. So let's create the reverse connection using the Veal framework and a Metasploit framework. Veal is a collection of tools used during offensive security testing. The most used tool in Veal is Veal Evasion, which can turn an arbitrary script or piece of shellcode into a Windows executable that will evade detection by common antivirus programs. The Metasploit framework, part of the Metasploit project, aids in penetration testing and intrusion detection system signature development. Its sub-project Metasploit develops and exploits code against remote target machines. To demonstrate this is a remote access attack, I've created an offline wide area network, local area network and email server. Network A is acting as my primary ISP router, providing local area network connectivity to two routers which are separated by a VLAN. The network address of the VLANs are 160.37.13.160 and 160.37.13.168. Network B router is using a WAN host address of 160.37.13.163 with a gateway of 160.37.13.161. Network C's router is using a WAN host address of 160.37.13.170 with a gateway of 160.37.13.169. Network B and C have a local area network address of 192.168.1.0/24, each with a host connected, one being the victim machine and one being the attacker. The attacker's router has port redirection rules enabled to listen for traffic coming in on ports 80 and 8080 from an external IP address and directing it to my Linux web server or my Metasploit framework. The victim and attacker routers both have ports 110 and 25 open to allow for email traffic to pass through. So I type in Veal on my terminal window, and once Veal is loaded, it gives me the option to use evasion or ordnance. So I'm going to use 1, and evasion is a tool which is designed to generate Metasploit payloads that bypass common antivirus programs. From here, I type in list and it's going to show me the available payloads, and I want to use a payload that's compatible with Windows, so I'll use 14, which is go/meterpreter/reverse HTTP. I'll then set the L host or the local host as my external IP address of the router this Linux machine is connected to, which is 160.37.13.163, and then set the local listening port to 8080. I use the external address here because this is the IP address the victim will connect back to once the executable has been launched. So the rule on the attacker's router has port 8080 configured to redirect the traffic coming in from an external address to the attacker's machine, which will be listening on that particular port. I set the sleep time to 3 seconds. This is the time it takes for the codec to execute on the victim machine. And I type generate. And it's going to ask me to name the output file, which I'll call patch-v1.20. So I've already directed myself to the folder the executable was saved to. I've copied the file into my web server folder and zipped it ready to be downloaded when the victim interacts with a fake web page or an email attachment. To begin the process of obtaining access to the victim machine, I need to start a phishing campaign. I'll start with a phishing email which will be claiming to be from Microsoft, asking the victim to install a security patch after a vulnerability has been found on the Microsoft platform. Much like most phishing methods, I've created a HTML document which will be my email body, and then I've created a fake HTML web page set up on my local server for the victim to interact with by executing a file download upon submitting a web form. The victim for my example is Gareth Keenan. Gareth's information was exploited on an online dating site along with thousands of other users who use that platform. The email I have for Gareth is gkeenan@burnhamhog.co.uk. He'll be receiving an email from support@microsoft.help. Let's send a phishing email to Gareth and see what it looks like on the other side. Gareth now has an email in his inbox claiming to be from Microsoft support. The email says, "Dear user, we've been alerted by our security team of a vulnerability within our operating system, and it has been found that attackers are able to connect to the victim machines via RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, without authentication and load remote code executions onto the victim machine. This poses a serious risk to our users. The following has been identified. There is total information disclosure, resulting in all systems files being revealed. There is a total compromise of system integrity and complete loss of system protection, resulting in the entire system being compromised. There is a total shutdown of the affected resources. The attacker can render the resources completely unavailable. This vulnerability affects users operating on Windows 7, 8, 10 and Server 2008, 2016 and 2019. While we're working towards a permanent fix on this issue, we strongly advise you to access our website and download the latest security patch, which is now available below. Sincerely, Microsoft Security Team." And below the email is a download button. So before I click on the download button, if I click on an article link within the email, you'll see it takes me to Microsoft's genuine web page and it shows me the relevant article to that button click. If I now go over to my attack machine, I need to start my Apache web server on the Linux machine. So I'll do service Apache 2 start. Then back to the Windows machine. If I go down and click download, I've been redirected to a web page that looks like Microsoft's web page. This web page basically replicates the email that I received, but with a few more words and graphics. The page URL is showing an IP, but an attacker could purchase domains to make it look like a fully qualified domain name such as microsofthelpdesk.com or microsoftupdate.com. There's a small HTML form asking for your name and an email address with the submit button, so let's input Gareth's information and see what happens. Now I've pressed submit, it's initiated a download called patch-1.20. Now the file is downloaded, the web page has forwarded me onto Microsoft's genuine website. Windows will now automatically show up the download window and show me the zipped file. So if I now go over to my attack machine and start up the Metasploit Framework console, or MSF console, and begin the process of listening for the reverse connection. A reverse connection is usually used to bypass firewall restrictions on open ports. A firewall usually blocks incoming connections on open ports but does not block outgoing traffic. In a normal forward connection, a client connects to a server through the server's open port, but in the case of a reverse connection, the client opens the port that the server connects to. The most common way a reverse connection is used is to bypass firewall and router security restrictions. Using the MSF console, I'm using the exploit multi-handler, which handles the exploits outside of the framework, so the real executable in this instance. Payload for the multi-handler to listen for, which is Windows interpreter / reverse HTTP. So if I go to show options, payload is asking for some required options, one being the L host and one being the port. So if I set the L host to my local Linux machine, which is 192.168.1.11, and if I go show options, I can see now that the L host part has been filled in and the L port is already saying 8080. So if I go ahead and type run, it's now started the HTTP reverse handler on 192.168.1.11 port 8080. If I now go back to the Windows machine and execute the download, let's see what happens. Now I've executed the install. If I go back to my Linux machine, I can see there's been a reverse connection started coming in from 160.37.13.170. So if I type in sysinfo, I can see the information about the remote computer. I can see it's using Windows 10 on a 64-bit operating system. The system language is US and it's connected to the main work group. If I do PS, which is the processes that are running on the victim computer, I want to look for Explorer and migrate with Explorer, which is 3772. So the migration has successfully completed. Now if I do cd, change directory, users, and do ls, I can see here there's a user called user. So I'll do cd user, and then do ls list again, see what's within this folder, and I can see there's a folder called documents within here. So if I now do cd documents and then list again, so within documents I can see many folders. I can see one that looks interesting called company documents. I can see one that's personal. So the first one I go to is company documents. So I'll do cd company documents. So I'm in that folder now, do ls. I can see there's two files, one called employees email.txt and one called wornamhog banking.txt. So a command I'm going to use is cat or concatenate, which allows me to view the file. So I'm going to do cat employees emails.txt. So within this file, there is a lot of emails and passwords in just plain text. So the passwords could be what they use to log into their email, or it could be what they use to log onto their machines, or it could be passwords that are used for their personal platforms like Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. So I can see here that Gareth's got an email address and a password, David Brent, Tim Canterbury, Dawn Tinsley, they've all got emails and their passwords there in plain text. Another thing I can do, I can download this file to my Linux machine. So if I do download employees emails.txt, that's now stored on my Linux machine locally. I now do cat wornamhog banking.txt. There's now a document here which has got banking details for Wornamhog. So it's got their card number, the sort code, account number, the expiry date on the card, the CVV. This is quite crucial information, so I could use these details to phone the bank, pretend to be from Wornamhog's accounts, and transfer money to my own account. So again, I'm going to do download Wornamhog banking.txt. So now cd out the document, change directory, go back a folder, do ls. See there's a folder called personal, so I'm going to change to there. So do cd personal, ls, and in here I can see March wages.png, I can see my personal banking.txt, I can see personal passwords as well. So if I do cat my personal banking.txt, file here which has got Gareth's personal card number, his PIN number, account and sort code. So once again I'm going to download that because this could be good information for me as an attacker. Go to cat personal passwords.txt. And once again, Gareth stored his passwords in plain text. So his Facebook, Twitter and LinkedIn password is Mr. Lieutenant, and his personal email address is garethkeenan-territorials@hotmail.com, and his password of boy faster than shark. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and download that. So let's see what else I can find on this computer. So if I go back a folder, go to ls, and then go back one more, and ls for list. You can see there's a folder called pictures. So I've not looked at any pictures yet. So if I do change directory pictures, in here I can see there is a picture called office.jpg. So I'll go ahead and download that. Office.jpg. So that's now stored on my local machine. So we can also see what the victim sees on their screen. So I'm going to enable screen share. I can take screenshots of potentially useful information that the victim has on their screen. For example, if they had their emails open and I was looking at the calendar bookings such as maintenance on the company building, if there's enough information on the screen, I could call the company and socially engineer the victim to think that there was a discrepancy of payment of the call out and direct them to my web server to rebook the booking. But on here we can see that I've just gone to Facebook on the victim machine, and I'm also on the Facebook webpage. Go to Google, type in Wernham Hog, and as my attack machine's just replicating whatever the victim screen is doing. So if I now go to my home directory, I can see the documents I've downloaded. So Wernham Hog banking.txt, give me all the information that we saw earlier. I can then go to the my personal banking folder and see the card number and all the details there. And then that picture that I downloaded, office.jpg, is a picture of Gareth Keenan standing outside his office. After I finish my attack, I can enable a persistent connection, which will allow me to come back at any time that I want and just go back into the victim's machine. Other methods of a remote access Trojan being executed is by way of an email attachment. Let's say I wanted to send an email to the victim claiming to be from PayPal, and attached to the email is a document of some type. Once the attachment is opened, it executes a hidden payload in the file and then creates a reverse connection. To do this, the original file will need to be manipulated by compiling, embedding or injecting malicious executables into the original file, or using steganography. From here it can then be emailed directly straight to the victim, and then once it's opened and executed, create the reverse connection back to the attacker. For this example, I'm using the same executable that I created in Veal for the Microsoft patch executable, but renamed it to PayPal-invoice21. I found a random invoice from PayPal on Google and have used AutoIt to compile the image and executable into one document. Within AutoIt, I can add an icon to make the file look more legitimate when the user sees it within the Explorer window. I zipped the file to hide the extension so it wouldn't show as an executable on the email, and named it in such a way that when it's extracted, it doesn't show as an executable but as a PDF. Then I'll use Metasploit to once again listen to the connection back to my machine. So once again, I generated the HTML online and added links to direct the victim to the genuine site. So when the link is clicked, it will take it to the web page that's relevant to that link that they've just clicked. So I'm going to now send the email from Callie, pretending to be from PayPal, to Gareth. The email contains a HTML document to show the body of the email, as we've just seen it, and it also has the file attached to create the reverse connection once it's been downloaded and executed.
I love you, Poppy.
Hey V, line them up.
Gareth's now received the email from what is claiming to be PayPal. If I go back to my Kali machine and begin listening for the reverse connection using the MSF console again. So if I go back to the Windows machine, I can see on the email that there is an attachment. If I go ahead and save that attachment, it will save into my downloads folder. So when the download location opens, I'll extract the contents. And there's a file called paypal-invoice21.pdf, and it also has the PDF icon on it as well. If I click on the file to open it, it opens the Windows photo viewer and displays the invoice from PayPal. If I go back to the attack machine now, start the reverse connection, and we can start the whole process over again. For this demonstration, I did make the victim's Windows machine vulnerable by disabling some firewall features and some antivirus features as well. This is not recommended at all in the real world instance. Always make sure that your security software is always up to date. The most basic bit of advice you can take from this video is not to open attachment or click on email links from unknown sources. If you do receive an email from a person or a service that you wasn't expecting, contact that person with either a fresh email or a phone number that you can get hold of them on, or raise a help desk ticket to the platform that you received the email from. It may be a bit more long-winded, but this is just to be sure that you haven't received a malicious email, and you can just double check that. If you do coincidentally receive an email from a platform or a service that you do use and has an attachment to it, saying an invoice, for example, go to Google, go to that website manually. There'll be invoices all stored within your account. You can just download from there. If you do download a zip file from an email or from a website, scan it with your antivirus software first before you unpack the contents. Always check domains from the emails that you receive and make sure it's at facebook.com, at twitter.com. Make sure it's using them and nothing else. So if it was at facebookhelpsupport.com, ignore that email. Following on for that, if you do click on a link within an email and it redirects you to a website, make sure it's using the FQDN or the fully qualified domain name, www.facebook.com, www.twitter.com. If you feel that you've received a phishing email from a platform, go to that platform by going to Google and raise a service desk ticket with them that's saying that you might have been victim to a phishing attempt. Usually your email client can detect spam emails automatically and will put that email straight into the junk folder or the spam folder. Always keep your antivirus and firewall up to date. When you update your antivirus, it downloads the latest known malware threat signatures. So if a malicious file is downloaded, your antivirus will cross-reference that with the threat database and will either block, quarantine, or remove that threat from your computer. If the signature is unknown to your antivirus software, this is called a 0-day. This means that the threat has exploited an unknown vulnerability in that operating system or that service. Security companies will usually react very quickly to that sort of threat and hopefully resolve the issue before it can spread any further. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you'll now be able to deal with a suspicious email that comes into your inbox, and you can now potentially see what can happen if you do fall victim to a remote access Trojan.